How do you get your daily dose of happiness? When I say your daily dose of happiness, do you get your happiness by binge watching your favorite show? Or is it by spending an endless amount of time in social media? Or is it by relishing your favorite food? Think about it for a moment and then we will get back to it shortly. Hi, welcome back to OneUs. Today is day 35 and we will be looking at verse 35 from Taoteching. As usual, let's observe a few seconds of silence. Alright, so now let's look at verse 35 from Taoteching. Everyone is drawn to those who keep to the one, for there lie rest and happiness and peace. The first two lines talks about most people are drawn to the one who follows the one. And what he means by the one is the one who is at peace with himself, or the one who can easily observe his own inner state of stillness and love. So, in a simple way, if you have to put the one who is at peace with himself. And then he says that most people are drawn to him because around him there lie rest, peace, and happiness. The people who are drawn to the one, in his presence, we feel the love, happiness, and peace. That's what he means. And then he goes on to say, passersby may stop for music and good food. So this is a very key line in the verse 35. When I say a key line, what Laotzu here he means is a passerby is the most people. The most people given to sensory-based satisfaction or sensory-based happiness. What I mean? A sensory-based happiness is, for an example, we like to watch TV, watch show and be happy about it. That is visual. And if you like to eat our favorite food and relish it, that is the taste. Or if you love to listen to the music, then it is the sense of listening. Likewise, the physical pleasure as well is one of the senses. So if some person is drawn to hold on to the sensory-based happiness or sensory-based pleasure, he is stuck. That's what Laotzu means here. So when we are talking about sensory-based happiness, we should also talk about few of the chemical or the neurochemical which plays a key roles. So we know that there are four primary feel-good hormones. It can be serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. And each gets released based on different situation. For an example, serotonin is a mood stabilizer. Dopamine is a pleasure, or in a simpler word, it's a reward hormone. For an example, when you post your photo on a social media and when you see likes coming up, then that is dopamine because it's the reward system that is getting triggered in your brain. Likewise, when you go for a walk or a run, you get runner's high. That is nothing but endorphins. And finally, the oxytocin. The oxytocin gets released when you feel the emotion of love and bonding. That is oxytocin. So these chemicals play a major role in our brain. And most often we rely on happiness which we get through our senses. Though all these neurochemicals play a role, it gets triggered by some physical senses. It can be food, it can be music, it can be spending time on social media, or it can be binge watching a TV show. It can be anything. And the other side is some of the addictions as well. For sometimes we all talk about addiction. We generally relate that with drug addiction or alcohol addiction. But the general term is addiction is nothing but anything that we do in excess. So when we talk about even food addiction or a work addiction, that's why we call some people as he is addicted to his work. He is workaholic. Why do we call that? Because someone is obsessed doing certain things so that his brains keep on releasing these feel-good hormones in a different way. And the only problem with sensory-based happiness or sensory-based pleasures are, over a period of time, as days go by, we feel the need for more and more. So that way we start consuming more and more. So when I say more and more, initially the social media, what we start with, say, spending 20 minutes or 30 minutes, eventually we increase the time that we spend. It can become like a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, it goes on. Likewise, when it comes to food, the food that which gave us happiness, we start depending on those food to get happiness. Likewise, it can be also binge watching some shows, movies. It all gets addicted, and then it's all sensory based happiness and pleasure hormones. So that is why what Laotzu talks here is, how do we detach ourselves from sensory based happiness? And then he goes on to say, but it is not possible to describe the Tao, the happiness or the pleasure we feel without triggered by the senses. It is the nature of the Tao. That's what he means. It is not possible to describe the Tao, but it is still there. And then he goes on, without substance or flavor, it cannot be seen, it cannot be heard. It doesn't have any substance or flavor. It is not a food. It is that we can taste it. We cannot see that. We cannot hear that. But then it is still there. To give you an example to relate, for an example, if you are in a noisy room, we can all focus on the noise which is all present around us, or we can also focus on a stillness which is also present. Just that a stillness is overtaken by the noises. And the other example is when we go into the state of meditation. What is meditation? It is nothing but letting go and be with our own self. The thought comes, thought goes, but still we feel the inner connectedness. So for few seconds maybe we can feel the state of complete stillness without thoughts. Though it is seconds, but it is still profound. So that is what Laotzu is talking about. The one who gets his happiness from the place of stillness, it is sustainable. He doesn't depend on sensory-based happiness like a food, TV show, social media, music, nothing. He connects with inside and still access the same happiness. The same serotonin, dopamine, endorphin and oxytocin still gets secretes in their brain. However, but it is not triggered by external stimulus or external senses. Rather, it is internal. And that is the crux of this verse. And finally, he ends it with, and yet it cannot be exhausted. It is again profound. Just imagine how much food that you can eat. Not much. And we may also run out of a food eventually. How much music that you can consume. Eventually we may run out of music. And how much show or anything, the social media. It is a dependency to consume more and more. Whereas this, it is not depend on anything. It is completely depending on our inner state, which is sustainable and it cannot get exhausted at all. And that's what Laotzu means in this verse. So with that, let's conclude day 35. And one actionable thought for today is, as the day go by, you know yourself better. So ask your own self, what are the things or sensory-based happiness or pleasure that you are attached to? It can be TV shows, it can be social media, or it can be music, or it can be something else. Check with your own inner self. And whatever you find as an answer, try to be mindful about it and delay that. For an example, if you say that your sensory-based happiness comes from, say, food, try to go on fast for some time. Maybe skip a meal in the morning. Maybe if you can, then skip the meal in the afternoon. Try to delay it as much as you can. And if you say your happiness comes from social media, then try to stay away from social media as much as you can. That way, it creates a space within you to connect within. Because most of us, we go towards the external sensory-based happiness and pleasure, we completely disconnect ourselves from inner stillness. And that's what Laotzu talks here is, the moment you connect with your inner stillness, you don't need any kind of sensory-based happiness. That's all. So with that, let's conclude day 35 and talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.